In order to be a well-rounded, self-reliant individual, you should at least have a general familiarity with all of the skills that I'm going to discuss today. It's important to note that most of us are not going to have the time nor mentorship available to gain a complete mastery over all of these skills. Now, hopefully, if there ever was a long-term grid down scenario, you would find yourself in a community of people who all had different specialized skill sets, ones that were vital to the survival of the group. However, depending on the nature of the event, you and your family may be left relatively landlocked and isolated, left solely to rely on yourself for your sustenance needs. The point of this video is to raise awareness and to help ensure that you have absolutely no delusions about what it's going to take to survive a long-term grid down situation. So let's get to it. As emergency preparedness has evolved beyond the bug-out bag fetishes of the early 2000s, we've come to realize that nobody wants to live out of a backpack in the wilderness for a prolonged period of time, and that any right-thinking person, or community for that matter, is going to want to have somebody who specializes in all of these areas that we're going to lay out today. This video is also going to act as a practical guideline for myself, as I plan on taking a serious deep dive into all of these areas in 2019, or as many as I can tackle. Each different discipline or domain I list, I'm going to provide links to YouTube channels and books and online courses which can help you develop your skills in those areas. Now, the first area that you're going to want to become proficient in is security. In some countries, you are able to carry firearms. Most of my subscribers live in North America, where we are allowed to possess firearms. Of course, the carry laws are going to vary depending on the country you're in and, of course, the state you're in. Areas which would be relevant in this category would be firearms training, martial arts training, reloading, archery, weapons improvisation, scouting, surveillance, and threat detection. Getting learned about subterfuge, booby traps, infiltration, escape and evasion, and how to properly maintain and store firearms will all prove to be very useful skills. There's a group in Canada called the Civil Advantage Group out of British Columbia, where you can actually go and get advanced firearm skills training that include live fire courses that try to hone your physical muscle memory as it pertains to handling a firearm, rapid action exercises, and stress control management. All very important things should you ever find yourself in a gunfight. There's numerous channels on YouTube which can teach you a lot about firearms. Among those are Carry Trainer, which provides you with just basic information on how to use firearms. And one of the new rising stars in the firearms community is Garen Thumb. Although this channel is more ado with gear reviews, he does go over some basic firearms training as well. Up next is going to be Automotive. You should have basic automotive know-how. In general, you should know the basic mechanical science behind how a vehicle works, namely a combustion engine, but you should also start getting familiar with electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. As they become more ubiquitous, there is a very good chance that in the case of a grid down scenario, barring an intense EMP which totally destroys all the electric vehicles, they're going to be there at your disposal and at the ready if you know how to repair them. In order to fix cars, you need to know how they work. Your ability to troubleshoot and repair automotive problems as they arise will play a pivotal role in your ability to harness the power of machines for both transport, construction, and agricultural use. So it's important that you go and learn how cars work. You can do that through online courses offered by Udemy. They offer introductory mechanics courses which range from 3 hours to 50 hours, depending on the skill level that you would like to achieve. In terms of books, there's Auto Repair for Dummies. In general, the For Dummies books are a great starter for any of the areas that I'm going to talk about today. And if you did one thing, you would be doing yourself a favor by picking up one of those books for each and every category that I'm going to discuss. Another book which details how cars work in a very clear and simple way is Auto Mechanics Fundamentals, and another book which is a bit more modern is called How Cars Work. There's a great YouTube channel called Eric the Car Guy who also explains things in simple terms for people who are not very familiar with cars. Due to the immensity of information that's available on YouTube, you would be wise to try to download as much of this information as you can while you can. Up next is gardening. The ability to regrow your own food is going to be important. You can only prep so much food and store so much food. You don't need to become a botanist or a fully fledged farmer, but you should understand the basics of horticulture. There's a Master Gardener Certificate program which is offered through a local university where I'm at, and they're going to talk about gardening fundamentals, tree and shrub identification, the fundamentals of entomology or insect identification, common plant diseases, safe use of pesticides, and how to save seeds. Once again, Udemy is a great resource for learning how to grow your own food. If you want a book which is a very general overview of how to live a self-sufficient life, I would encourage you to go and get John Seymour's book, The Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It. It's a great primer, and there's also very useful information within it on how to have your own homestead. I'll post a link to that in the description. The next section is going to be animal husbandry. So keeping livestock or beekeeping will prove to be very lucrative and vital in a post-collapse world. Animals not only provide meat, they perform a variety of other functions. Creating an apiary and keeping bees is going to help out the ecosystem, will pollinate your crops and provide you with honey. Cows will provide you with milk and manure for fertilizer, and their hides will also provide you with leather. The fat and oils from these animals can also perform a range of functions which are too numerous to list. And meat and food commodities in general will always be high-valued commodities for trade and barter. The next category is hunting, gathering, trapping, and fishing. Even if you do have a self-sufficient lifestyle, this is going to be supplemented by these methods. You will be required to identify wild edibles, identify poisonous plants, be able to identify different species of fish, have a familiarity with traps, both primitive and of steel. You'll need to be practiced in the different hunting strategies that are used to hunt different types of animals. And of course in the processing of wild game, including field dressing, skinning, quartering, butchering, and preserving the meat thereafter. Food preservation in itself could be its own category when you get into things like curing, canning, dehydrating, and properly storing your food for long term. I don't think any YouTuber has processed more wild game than the Wooded Beardsman, so go check out his channel on YouTube. The next area of specialty is going to be forestry, and carpentry is closely tied to this one as well, because you're going to have to be able to identify different types of trees, which ones you're going to use for firewood, which ones you're going to use for building structures. You're going to have to know how to harvest and process that wood. You're going to want to have a basic familiarity with general woodworking tools, and of course have basic building, carpentry, and whittling skills should you ever have to build or repair an existing structure with natural materials. Another area that you may want to explore is the wonderful world of blacksmithing. There's a few individuals on YouTube whose names I cannot pronounce who do blacksmithing. Now one of them is using more primitive tools and comes from more of a bushcraft background. Another guy is integrating it with power tools. So both of these ways I think have merit, because just because the grid goes down doesn't mean you're not going to have power tools, especially if you have generators which are capable of running those power tools. The Einergy Kodiak generator can generate up to 3,000 watts, and that can run on solar power. That's peak, I should say, 1,500 watts continuous. So it can power a lot of different power tools, and of course if you do have a gas powered generator or a propane powered generator, those will also be able to generate that electricity required for the power tools, which is going to make your life a lot easier and is going to make this process a lot faster. So understand the basics of blacksmithing. There is actually a place in town here where they do traditional blacksmithing that I'm going to pay a visit for a day, just to familiarize myself with a bit of the process. Not to become a master, but just to know in case I ever needed to. Up next is first aid. Now ideally we would all be nurses and doctors or EMTs in the very least, but unfortunately we don't all have that luxury. Another commonly neglected area of first aid with regards to post-collapse preparedness is midwifery. You may be the unfortunate but also fortunate one who is with a woman who is in labor. Familiarizing yourself with this process can help put her mind at ease and may mean the difference between life and death for the infant. Having a general knowledge of first aid is a good start, but even that is going to have its limits in a grid down scenario, because a lot of first aid is just training you to keep a person stable while help arrives. There's a great book by Dr. Bones called The Survival Medicine Handbook, which will provide you some direction on what to do if help isn't coming. There's other channels on YouTube like the Skinny Medic who goes over the basics of emergency medical intervention. Now, another area you're going to want to have a general familiarity with is bushcraft and survival skills. Things like how to tie knots, tracking, how to make fire, how to find water, how to purify water without modern systems, orienteering, navigation, how to build a shelter. And one of the best teachers of this stuff, I believe, is Dave Canterbury. In spite of all the controversy that surrounded him a few years back, he still is, I believe, one of the best teachers of the art form and has one of the most comprehensive libraries of how-to stuff on his YouTube channel. So I'm going to post a link to his YouTube channel in the description, so go check that out. Now, another area that you're going to want to explore is the area of energy. So this is how to set up heating, solar systems, electrical systems, because as much as some people think we will regress to a medieval standard of living, that simply is not going to be the case. Human knowledge isn't going to just go extinct. Even though a lot less of humanity's knowledge that we've accrued over the past several hundred years is not making it to print anymore and is only being stored in digital format, it would have to be a very widespread and devastating scenario that took us back to a point where we weren't able to use basic electronic devices. Now, of course, nobody's going to be manufacturing solar panels post-collapse, at least not in the beginning. So finding alternative energy sources, be they repurposing alternators from vehicles to make wind turbines, or even finding other materials via geological means, so finding a way to mine coal or other combustible materials is going to be an indispensable skill that everybody is going to want. If you find yourself in coal country, you better be putting those places on the map, because that's going to be a fuel source. You're going to be able to barter with it for people who need it for blacksmithing. Coal can also be used to power steam engines. A great YouTube channel for learning how to meet your energy needs post-collapse is Engineer775. Go check out his channel on YouTube. Another area is communication. I would strongly encourage you to take a course through your local amateur radio club. Go check out Survival Tech Nord's channel. Get a familiarity with ham radio. There's a book called Ham Radio for Dummies, which will be a good starting point for getting your license. There's also the ARRL Ham Radio License Manual and the ARRL Handbook for Radio Communications. Many people take advantage nowadays how they can just pick up the phone and call somebody, even if it's only somebody who lives 3 blocks away. That's 3 blocks of walking. That takes time, that takes energy. If you ever had to communicate post-collapse, think of all the calories that can be saved via comms. So not just having a proficiency with ham radio, but even knowing the basics of how telecoms work in itself would be very beneficial in a grid down situation. Other areas that you might want to explore are how to make alcohol or wine. Alcohol, of course, can be used as a fuel source, and it can be used for drinking and bartering. Other skills you may want to consider: sewing, knitting, and crocheting are all very important skills, once again, that we take for granted because we assume that the clothes that we have on our backs right now are going to last forever, but the unfortunate reality is that they aren't, and somebody is going to have to sew new clothes. And of course that means processing natural materials, whether those are cottons or animal furs, and you're going to have to know how to tan hides, how to work the hides, how to make the appropriate cuts. Things like churning butter, making candles, making oil lamps, making charcoal, composting, equestrian stuff, horsemanship. These are all things that having a base level familiarity with will not do you wrong in a grid down situation. Another general category to become familiar with is waterworks. The ability to purify water at scale, to find, drill for, and utilize groundwater, and to manage sanitation and human refuse is going to be absolutely critical in determining the health and wellness of your community. Knowing the basics with regards to plumbing, irrigation, sanitation, waste disposal, and water filtration are critical components of any long-term preparedness strategy. If there's any other areas that I've missed that you guys think are vital to post-collapse self-reliance, let me know in the comment section below. I also want to say again that you shouldn't just rush out and try to learn all of these things at once. Focus on one or two of these domains of self-sufficiency and do so sequentially so you're not overwhelming yourself with too much general information. A great way to get a familiarity with all of this stuff, if you know somebody who has a homestead or who has a farm, ask them if you can come out for a day and just spend the day there and see how things work. Obviously, modern farms are going to have a lot more bells and whistles than you would be privy to in a grid down situation, but this is going to have the effect of priming you for the real thing. So I challenge you in 2019 to get serious about your skill sets, because it's very likely that the crash is coming, and your skills are going to mean the difference between you surviving short term and surviving long term, and by how valued you are going to be by your community when the lights go out. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget there's links in the description related to all the things that I talked about in this video. Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this YouTube channel is to support yourself by gearing up through CanadianPreparedness.com or BugOutRoll.ca. Premium quality gear at the best possible price using the incredibly secure and easy to use Shopify platform. We offer free shipping to the United States for orders over $200 USD and free shipping to Canada over $75. So support the channel by supporting yourself.